Hello and welcome back. I'm in the workshop and I'm just going to have a very quick discussion about the makeup of wood, if you will, the biology or physiology of the wood and the components itself which go up to make the wood or the stick, or which then translates into a hiking stick for us as the actual maker and user of those items. So in a roundabout way, we'll just dive straight into it. So you can see I've got 4 sticks in various different stages of manufacture and process. On the extreme left, I've got one that's sanded down to the actual sapwood, and I have very little, shall we say, of the Cambrian or indeed any of the live bark or outer bark left on that stick. It's pretty much just sapwood. The one next to it, which would be second from the left, has been sanded and it's pretty much has the outer bark removed. There is some of the inner bark and there's some of the Cambrian, but I haven't really gone down into the sapwood on that one. The third from the left is already a completed hiking stick, and from there you can see I've left the outer bark, I have some of the inner bark, I have the Cambrian, and I've gone down to the actual sapwood on that one to actually do my wood burning. And here on the extreme right hand side I have a stick in its raw form, and you can see there's patches of dead bark, which is the outer bark, and then you have the live bark which is poking through that, and indeed some of the live bark is still on the outside where the dead bark hasn't fallen away. But in effect, you can see that as it would be in the wild. So this is a very rough drawing of the basic makeup of your wood or the stick that you're going to be processing and the various layers. You can go online and source all this information out, and indeed it's quite fascinating that a piece of wood has all this makeup within it and more if you want to go more in depth with it, and you can find out what each piece does. But this is basically the pith, which would be the center core, and then you go out to the actual heartwood, and as a rule you can usually tell that because it has a slightly different colour than the surrounding outer bits of wood. You then go to the bits surrounding the heartwood, would be the sapwood. Now, like I said, you can usually denote the difference between them by coloration. That's not a given, but you know, as a rule you can usually see that. Then we have the traditional growth rings that most people are aware of, and as a child you learn that in school about the growth rings, that each ring as a rule represents a year. Now you then move out then to the Cambrian layer. Now that there will be the layer sitting right underneath the actual live bark, which is the next layer on top of the Cambrian. You then have the outer bark, which sits on top of the live bark. Now that basically is for a overview, any bark that hasn't fallen away is basically the dead bark that's still clinging to the tree, you know, and it'll be interdispersed with the live bark. Sometimes trees will shed their outer bark quite fast, so you will have the live bark in its entirety, but you can expect patches of dead bark still to be attached to the tree, and they would sit on top of the live bark naturally. So as you can see, the humble hiking stick that you may have in your hand will have a lot of various different layers in its makeup, and you know, that's just something that, you know, we don't think about, it's just a given. But you can see these two side by side, The underneath one is, like I said, is mostly sapwood, while I still have the Cambrian attached here, and I won't sand that back too much. That's my particular style of hiking stick. The bottom one I very rarely go this far with because it doesn't sit with my overall brand in effect. But yeah, if you're getting a stick like and you're sanding it down and you're trying to keep a feel of authentic out in the woods kind of look, if you go too hard with your sanding, you will go through that and go straight into the actual sapwood which is underneath it. And everything with woodwork, once you remove it, it's pretty much done. You can't put it back on. So basically you can see there I have the end of a hiking stick there that's been cut off, and this one will be turned or manufactured into a hiking stick at some point. But you can clearly see the pith there that we were talking about. You might just be able to see slightly darker patches here. Let my phone focus. That would be the heartwood. You can clearly see the growth rings. The sapwood is definitely visible around the actual heartwood there. What might not be quite so visible is the Cambrian, but it is still there. You can see it if you look hard enough. And there you have the bark. And that's pretty much mostly live bark on that one, as this particular hiking stick doesn't have much remnants of the old dead bark attached to it. But there, you can clearly see what we've just seen in the diagram, basically with this actual hiking stick here. And this finished one here clearly demonstrates those various properties. If you look there, you can see a white dot there, and that is actually the actual pith. And you can see the growth rings, and you can see it's slightly darker there, and that is the actual heartwood. And due to the way it's been shaped, you can start to see all the overlapping rings within that wood. And you can see the lighter colour bits on the outside, which are the sapwood. And when you come up to the actual where the bark has been sanded back, you can see that Cambrian layer. Then it goes into the actual live bark, and there's no real patches of or substantial patches of dead bark on this hiking stick. But yeah, you can see how that all flows together on this one, right away from the actual pith through the various bits of wood all the way out to the live bark. So once you understand and know how wood is formed and its basic makeup, you can then apply that to your hiking sticks on how much you're going to take off and what effect you're actually looking for. It's like this one here. I have a patch of Cambrian and live bark on the outside, but if I wanted to remove that to give this a completely clear sapwood finish look, I'm going to have to take a lot more sapwood around the outside of it to bring it down. Thus it will take the diameter out of this piece of wood, and I'll have to then gradually taper that in up here and down here. So basically, you know, you will have to pick your dimensions of the starting point of your wood to achieve the stick you're looking for, because you're trying to remove this, and that would sit possibly another mil, maybe 2 mil inside the sapwood, which is already exposed. So there's a lot of consideration on the actual starting point to how you actually sand or remove the bark in the processing to get the dimensions of the stick you're looking for in the first place. And like I said, due to my style of sticks, I'm quite happy to leave this in place because it gives you that slightly under processed feel and look, which suits my brand. So this hiking stick here has actually been sanded in shape. It's fully complete and it's just waiting for the varnish to go off. And as you can see, it's still shiny, it's wet. So you'll have to excuse that. But you can see basically what I'm talking about by sanding to leave the various stages of the wood makeup in place. So here you can see I've got a very light little bit of Cambrian left on the handle, giving it a darker look, to where I come down and you can start to see I've kind of started to sand into the actual sapwood. And as you can see, I've gone down here, I'm slightly heavier into the sapwood because I've started to hit a real creamy wood. And as you come down here, you can see there I still have quite a lot of Cambrian there, and you can just see the fibres there within the actual wood itself there. And coming all the way down here to where I start to come into the tip, and I've brought it back down into the wood. I've started to go into the heartwood at the very bottom there, and you can see it's slightly darker there by the copper ferrule, to where I've started to funnel it down, which is slightly lighter, which is the sapwood. So that was a very quick look at how the makeup of your hiking stick or basic stick that you're going to turn into a hiking stick actually is in its biological makeup and as it actually is in its raw form. I hope you kind of enjoyed that, and I'll catch you again. This is Andy from Folklore Hiking Sticks.